Welcome to Madlit Musings, the podcast where you get to eavesdrop on your favorite authors without getting caught. I've been stoked to have authors like Angela Hunt, Bill Myers, Nicole Deese, Tessa Afshar, comedian Bob Smiley, and more on the show, and this year I have another great lineup of storytellers and truth-sayers. If you love to eavesdrop at coffee shops like I do, this is the podcast for you. It's where we get real, we get tough, we laugh, and we might even cry. It's where we meet authors on a different level, where every story and podcast episode has its own heartbeat. So hang out with me today. I'm Jaime Jo Wright, your host at Madlit Musings. This is your podcast for real chats with real authors about real life. Hi everyone, it is Jaime Jo Wright here at Madlit Musings, and you have the opportunity to eavesdrop again on another conversation of coffee chats with me drinking coffee, and I don't know if my guest drinks coffee, but
I love coffee, actually.
She loves coffee. Okay, good. So today we have Kylie Woodley with us, and we're going to be chatting about her book. It's a historical, kind of Western, French, a little bit of everything thrown in there, and we're going to pretty much go all over the Western United States. I mean, y'all are in for a ride with this one. Kylie, welcome.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here, Jaime.
It's fun to have you here because I've actually been on your podcast. So you can give a plug on the title of the podcast. I want to make sure I have you do it so it's right. Like, what's the title?
The Historical Bookworm Show. Darcy
Yes.
Fournier and we host over there. And so it's a show for lovers of history and readers of inspirational fiction. And we have some of our favorite inspirational historical authors. So, yeah, you want to check it out?
It's awesome.
Historical Bookworm.
Honestly, I'm kind of blessed and I feel honored to have been on the podcast because, you know, my books are split time, so I don't always get lumped in as a historical author. But I love the fact that you saw the history in my books too, and you're like, yeah, you can come on here. So yeah, everybody will want to check out that podcast. But today we're actually here to talk about your book called Bandits Redemption.
Mm-hmm.
Super exciting. Now, I forgot to ask you before we started, has it released yet?
So the release date is February 18th,
Okay.
and this is my debut novel, so I'm really excited. And pre-order is available for paperback and ebook, and I'm actually building my launch team right now. Yesterday, though, I put out, some people don't have time for launch teams. I know I feel that. Like, I might have time to read a book and review it real quick, but I just don't always have time to be on someone's launch team as much as I would love to do that. And so I'm also just offering ARCs for advanced reader copies for people who are wanting to just, read that and review, make it a little easier.
I am pausing here because my internet just went wonky. There you go. Sorry about that.
No, that's all right.
For some reason, it was doing Wi-Fi and it had disconnected from the fiber because the cable got pulled out. I have a really loose connection on my computer. Okay.
Are we back?
We're back.
Okay.
All right. Awesome. So you're getting your launch team together and getting people ready to read early copies. Isn't that like a nerve-wracking feeling when you know you're sending out early copies and people are going to start reading and giving their actual feelings about the story?
It is nerve-wracking. This morning, sister-in-law, she commented on the post that I put on Instagram and Facebook, just offering ARCs. And she's like, me, I want one. I want to read your book. And for a minute, I was like, oh, what if she hates it?
Right.
And I started replying, almost with, if you don't like it, it's okay. And I was like, oh, I can't put that. No, It's not everyone's cup of tea, but, it's a good story. It's from, in Wild Heart Books, they put, they just have a fantastic team over there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm excited for it to be out there. It's okay if it's not for everyone. I mean, coffee's not for everyone.
It should be, but it's not. You're right.
I know. Some people go with tea. My daughter, energy drinks. We're trying to purge her of energy drinks. But she's 18, so she's like...
Yeah, she's kind of on her own on that one. Like, Mom can't tell me what to do, teen.
Yeah, to a degree.
To a degree. I love it. Yeah, it's kind of funny with my debut novel, I found, and honestly, with every novel I put out, let's just be honest, I get nervous the most when it's somebody who's in the family who picks it up or comments on something, because I'm like, the stranger from Nebraska who reads my book and doesn't like it, I'm kind of like, I'm sorry. But if it's your mother-in-law who doesn't like it, or your sister-in-law or your sister, you're just like, I'm sorry, I have to live with you for the rest
It's true. It's true. It's kind of sad. My mom's passed on now, and this is my debut. But she refused, and this is just her being funny the way she was. But she refused to read anything that I wrote because she was just like so afraid that if she didn't like it, that she would hurt my feelings or she just wouldn't be able to tell me. But I was always like, "Oh, it's okay, Mom. It's fine."
Yeah, yeah. My mom is also passed on, and she was never a big fiction reader. She read mostly nonfiction.
Mm-hmm.
So when she saw my first book come out, she's like, "Well, I'm going to read it," and I'm like, "I don't even think you're going to like it. Like, you don't even read fiction." And she sent me a picture of her sitting in the chair, and she's like, "My goodness, your dad's going to starve. I can't get out of this chair to go make him supper." So yeah, I was like, it's a really good memory now. I'm like, "Aw, thanks, Mom."
My pastor, he's elderly. He has like a PhD and like went to
Super
seminary.
smart.
And and he's like, "Oh, I can't wait to read your book." I'm like, "Oh, you like historical romance?"
Like, some people are like, they want to support you so badly, and then you're like, "No, you really don't. Please don't. Don't do it. Don't do it." I don't know what I would do if my pastor read my book. I'd probably go into a little hole and die. Not that there's
I
anything
know.
in there like he couldn't read because
Yeah,
it's inspirational, but
it's just very personal.
yes, yes. I don't know if readers realize that, and we will talk about your book, but these kind of conversations are the things that people like to eat on, right? I
Yeah.
don't know if readers realize how much of an author goes into a
Mhm.
story, like their
Yeah.
vulnerability. And did you find when you wrote the book that you put like a ton of yourself into it? Not necessarily stories, but just you.
I did in layering, like usually the first draft, it's just all about like the adventure and where they're
Mm-hmm.
going. And then,
Mm-hmm.
as I go through edits and continue to layer in, what I found though is that as I'm like going to church and doing my Bible studies, and then I'll take notes while I'm at church, I'll have story notes. I'm like, oh, that's why so and so did this.
Mm-hmm.
That's a scripture and it goes with this. And so in that way, it definitely does, like it's kind of a piece of your heart. I have one story that I wrote. It was the first story I wrote after my mom passed, and it's not out there, and it probably won't be out there because so much of it
Mm-hmm.
was like her and then our experience the last 2 months of her life. She was in the ICU for 2 months.
Oh my goodness.
And my sister and I went up there. She was only ever alone for 2 nights. Like we were
Yeah.
we were up there.
Yep.
And so it has some of that, like the main characters in the ICU and her family. There's a
Mm-hmm.
perspective of one of her family
Mm-hmm.
members, and I don't know if I'd put it out there.
Yeah.
It's just such a tender. There's so much in there that's tender. Maybe when I've grieved more, maybe I could put it out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I
There's
don't know.
a lot of vulnerability. And I think writing, in the same way you'd write a journal, I think writing fiction can sometimes be therapeutic.
Oh, yeah.
And so those types of books that maybe never see the light of day are still ways for you to process your emotion and
Mm-hmm.
faith and all the questions that go with grieving and loss. And
I think so.
yeah,
I agree.
absolutely. All right. Well, we're not talking about the book that's in your filing drawer. Or probably more like in the cloud now. That aged me by saying filing drawer. Like, does anybody use filing cabinets anymore?
My husband does.
Okay, I like your
Yeah,
husband.
me too.
I have filing cabinets on either side of me here, but
Oh, wow.
they're filled with like coffee.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like coffee packets
I love
and
that.
they're more like storage than filing. I'm not
Yeah.
necessarily like filing things.
Yeah, he files everything, like, for 7 years. He's like, "Oh, gotta keep that, 7 years."
Yep.
But
Yep.
it kinda like, we've been together almost 20 years. And so, at the end of these 7 years, we'll just take them out and throw them away and put in the
That's
new
nice.
year.
That's nice. There you go. Fun, fun. Okay. We are going to talk about your book now. Let's do
Yay.
that. Bandits Redemption. It's set in 1875.
Yeah.
And before we started recording, you were telling me a little bit about it. So let's go there. Talk to me. What is this story going to give our readers?
Yeah, so, actually, we just did such a great job on the blurb. I would love to read that for you.
Absolutely. Sometimes that's easiest. Go for it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, our tagline here is "Hold Up Gone Wrong, a reluctant outlaw and the captive she's sworn to protect." Life in the American West hasn't been easy for French refugee Lorraine Durand. She has precious few connections and longs to return to her native land. So when the man who rescued her from a Parisian uprising following the Franco-Prussian War persuades her to help him with a deadly holdup, she reluctantly agrees. Despite his promises otherwise, the gang kidnaps a man, forcing Lorraine to grapple with the fallout of her choices, even as she's drawn to the captive she's meant to guard. Now, Jesse Alexander must survive, if not for himself, then for the troubled sister he left behind in Los Angeles. At the mercy of his captors, he carefully works to earn Lorraine's trust, hoping he can easily subdue her when the time comes. But as they navigate the treacherous wilderness and he searches for his opportunity to escape, he realizes there may be more to her than he first believed. With danger lurking at every turn, they must decide whether to trust each other enough to plan a combined escape or risk falling prey to the gang's devious schemes.
So yeah, if you are a major reader of historical romance, that's going to be right up your alley.
I hope so.
That's got everything. Okay, so in the description there, I was talking about Lorraine, and you used the word Franco. What was the word?
Franco-Prussian War. It was actually the war between France and Germany. But at the time, the Prussian state was just a huge, that's where all the military was, and they just had a lot of power in Germany. And so historically, the term is Franco-Prussian War, and it's actually one of the many Napoleons who declared war on Germany. And unfortunately, or however, fortunately, I'm not sure. Only God knows. But France lost. And so Germany occupied portions of France for a number of years. This is when they, French signed over Alsace-Lorraine, which I believe they got back either in World War I or World War II. But this is when they lost it to Germany as part of that. And it's just a really interesting portion of history. But a lot of the French people who lived through the war and survived in poverty and being trapped in Paris when it was under siege. They weren't supposed to be taxed. But since France lost the war and then a new government came into place, and then businesses and people, they were just heavily, heavily taxed. And so there was an uprising in Paris in response to that. But a lot of the Parisian, I think that's how you say it. But people,
yeah, I think so.
People
we'll go
living,
with it.
Yeah.
We're just going to go with it.
So many of the people living in Paris, they were just caught up in this conflict. And when France, because Germany, they kind of stepped back and let the French military, handle your people. And when they did, I think the death toll was in the thousands. We still don't know to this day. And then many people were rounded up. They did find some of the leaders of the Commune Party, but others were just rounded up and shipped to penal colonies. The name slipped my mind now, but over by Australia, they were shipped over there. And so Lorraine, the reason she really agrees to the holdup is because her friend tells her that the proceeds will go to helping free those people. And that's really where her heart is. And Jesse challenges that lie, and she has to kind of come to grips with the truth and the facts that are there and that are staring her in the face. So that's all backstory.
I was going to say, there's so much history just in the backstory. Now I am already wanting you to write a prequel. So what made you take that leap of the Franco-Prussian War and then tie it into the American West? I mean, that's such an interesting combination. I love it.
Yeah. So originally I joined with some indie authors to write and be part of a novella collection. And the connecting thread was the West, Hearts of the West. And so I went with the outlaw theme and then kind of turned that on its ear with, making it so it's a female bandit. And then looking at her skill set and her history and, what she has led to, she does she's really good with horses. So she does some horse riding in the beginning that go back to her roots because her mother was Romani and her dad was a French military officer. She really leans towards her French roots because after her dad's passing, she was able to go to school for girls that they had in France at the time for the officers of Napoleon's army. And so she was able to go there. And so just kind of following that trail and looking at the timeline, because, you want to be really careful with what's going on and how these people would have been affected by their economy and everything politically that was going on. And so it was really just a lot of rabbit trails and kind of finding one that worked and finding that wound for her. She's holding on to the past and kind of unwilling to put down roots in America. So she refuses to speak English most of the time. And she only wants to eat like French food, and she only wants to be around people who speak her language. She orders like special dresses and lace from France because she's just trying to like keep that identity.
Hang on to that. Yeah.
After a war where she's really lost that.
Okay, so let's talk about the hero now. So he comes in from left field.
Yes.
And he must have been kind of fun to develop.
Yeah, he was. He was interesting. In the opening scene, he has an argument with his dad, and actually his dad comes across as he's like kind of one of those old brash fellows that probably all of us have in our life that we love, but at the same time sometimes we're like, you should just stop talking. And
let's not name names, but I can think of a few.
And he's insisting, so the Titus Alexander, Jesse's father, is insisting that he take over. Like, he's like, you finished school, your mother's passed, and you've grieved, and you've just been in this slump. You really need to like get your life together, and I want you to go to the mine in Caribou Mountain, Idaho, because he has to go to a mine in California. And so they kind of have that argument, and you see Jesse's sister, Aubrey, and she's just escaped a bad situation that we don't know a lot about. And she's depressed, and he's like, oh, I don't want to leave her. But in the end, Dad wins. And so he ends up going to Caribou Mountain and getting kidnapped. And the whole time he's like, I need to get back, because it's like 2 months later. So he'd finished what his dad required of him in Caribou Mountain, and he wants to get back to his sister and make sure she's okay. And then he gets kidnapped. So there's even more set against Lorraine and Jesse, not only because he's American and she's holding on to her French roots, but she's taken him and is preventing him from returning to his sister. And that's really what he wants to do.
And don't stand between a brother and a sister.
Yes.
Let me tell you, I have those two dynamics in my house between my children, and they will fight like cats and dogs. But my goodness, if somebody turns on one of them, the other one is just all up in their face.
Oh yeah, for sure. They stick together.
Yeah. That's cool. That's fun. So you really have kind of a neat mix. You've got some interesting historical perspectives, and you've got the American West, which how many areas do you cover in this book? Because you were mentioning.
So we start in Idaho, and I had to like research to see like what trails they would take and border, like crossing from Idaho down into Utah and towns they would go through. And so they just go down, they are from Idaho and then down into Utah to Salt Lake City. Okay. And that was a lot of fun, and that's where I tried to bring out the West.
Yeah.
Is, looking at what we had there at the time and just the setting and that journey. Things we see in Westerns might be like trains and train robberies. There's not actually a train robbery, but they're on a train and some things happen there. And then hideouts and camping out, and they just discover different things and encounter some different dangers and that you would see in an Old West movie. So I'm from the West, but like way up north I'm from Washington State. And I grew up on like John Wayne and Westerns. My family loved Westerns. My grandpas were World War II vets, and they loved, we watched those together. So it was a lot of fun being able to write this story too. With elements that are just close to my heart and close to my family's heart.
Yeah, I do love those Westerns. I grew up watching John Wayne too.
Yeah. I mean, like now as adult, we look at him, we're like, oh, I don't know if I'd want to be kissed like that. That looked painful. But
it was the aggression of what the 90s and 50 movies, like the I'll be conquered by the hero was such the trope at that time. Back-breaking kisses.
For sure. But so much, our old Westerns and video really recorded a part of our history. Because you can see so many, the nuances of what was acceptable and what was expected, and different ideologies that were alive then, and some are still alive today. But I just find it fascinating. I don't usually criticize history, but I'll be like, oh, so that's what it was like. That's interesting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. So Bandits Redemption, now, is this a standalone or is this the beginning of a series, a trilogy, or where are we going with all this?
It's the beginning of a series. It's a 3-book contract. So in book 2, I'm working on right now and just kind of looking at book 3, what that will be like. Book 2 is Aubrey's story. Aubrey is
Oh,
Jesse's sister, and some surprises along the way. And then Jesse is a secondary character in that book. We don't see him a lot, but like he visits. And
he visits.
there are a couple other characters that show up too, who just needed some redemption and needed some more work on their character arc before they get like their third. There's going to be a third book too. So
yes, awesome.
yeah.
Sounds fun. So if readers want to connect with you, if they want to get Bandits Redemption, etc., what's the best ways to do that?
Have it all on my website. I research a lot when I'm arranging podcast interviews for Darcy and I. And so when I look at author websites, I'm like, they don't have all their links together. They didn't do this. And so when I built my website, I was like, it just needs to be very like reader friendly, user friendly. So it's all on my website, KylieWoodley.com. I also have a free short story, which is about a French lady who comes to America to sabotage a wedding.
Ooh.
And it's actually connected to the Bandits Redemption. So you can sign up for my newsletter. I just have updates, and I always throw in something historical that I'm working on. So yeah, KylieWoodley.com. It's really the best place to get a hold of me. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as well. And then the podcast, historicalbookworm.com.
Yep.
Darcy and I do a lot there and chat a lot there. So
super fun. Well, Kylie, this was so fun to have you here. Congratulations on your debut. That's exciting. And we look forward to having you in the future for books 2 and 3.
Thank you, Jamie. And it's been fun chatting.
It's been great. And that's a wrap for today here at Manlet Musings. I hope you join us again. And if you want to, be sure you like and subscribe here at your favorite podcast player or on YouTube, because you won't want to miss all the wonderful alerts that let you know when we have another conversation for you to eavesdrop on.